Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, welcome to a little bit of Total War Warhammer 2. So, what I want to talk today about is the Skaven. Now, these guys are kind of an interesting faction. I think that lately it's been a little bit harder for them to sort of come to grips with beating High Elves. I think that they're still a decent faction, but I think that High Elves are actually one of the factions that can do pretty okay against them. The main sort of weakness that I find the Skaven really have is that if you kill their lord, they really suffer. And there are plenty of factions that are actually really quite good at dealing with their lord. So the High Elves are not really an exception to that, and that's basically going to be what you're going to send out your troops to do. The other thing is that like their really cheap units here are just so thoroughly outclassed by things like Swordmasters that they basically get annihilated. But the problem is that when you upgrade to something like, say, Death Runners, they're very heavily reliant on this physical resistance of 30%, and I find that the High Elves have probably got the best army-wide access to magic attacks through Alariel the Everqueen, which is coincidentally also one of the better lords for assassinating enemy lords, being a flyer who's capable of casting an enemy general sniping spell. And she's also pretty good at charging in and killing generals. What makes the Skaven sort of scary are, generally speaking, artillery pieces, but these can sometimes be swarmed or killed off quickly enough that they don't make a humongous difference. Mostly, I'm worried about a Skaven player that brings perhaps one Plague Claw catapult and one Warp Lightning cannon and then focuses heavily on protecting them. Their monsters and beasts are pretty okay, but if you're focused too heavily on things like rat ogres, they can get killed off pretty quickly, and Hellpit Abomination is not very good against High Elves. All the High Elves' main sort of large units are either flyers, or just going to be able to keep away from these guys. The other thing that these guys, generally speaking, rely on are things like Gutter Runner Slingers, Gutter Runners with poison, or things like just slave slingers. The problem with these units is that they've got relatively low ammunition counts for the amount of damage that they do per projectile. And since the High Elves have such good missile resistance basically across the board, it's very difficult to get much utility out of these guys. You could theoretically use something like the Warp Fire Thrower, but they don't work very well in general, and unfortunately, they also use flaming ammunition, which can really backfire when you're taking them up against the High Elves. So I think that ultimately this is going to be one of those really sort of tricky to win ones, despite the fact that High Elves, generally speaking, suffer against large numbers of opponents. I find that Clan Rats with Shields are one of the only units out there that the High Elf Spearmen can actually beat. You'd think that, like, given that it's 125 points difference, well, I mean, beat consistently and beat without too much trouble, but yeah, like that, you think a 500 point unit would have more things that would actually do pretty well against, but yeah. In any event, though, let's go ahead and take a look at a quick match here. Now, my opponent did not take the artillery in this particular case, but he took the Gutter Runners instead, and they're actually a perfectly decent unit for this purpose, kiting away. For the High Elves, if you chase after these sorts of units, all you're going to do is get shot sort of in the back as one unit ends up running away from you, the other unit ends up behind you, and they sort of pick away at you. But Clan Arts of Shields here, Death Runners, all that sort of stuff, Plague Monks even, all those sorts of units just get absolutely crushed there. So this is a very assassin-focused High Elf army. The Swordmasters are basically just going to clear their way through basically everything, and that's basically their goal. And he has got some, he has got these guys over here, so he has got some hitting power against my Swordmasters in the form of those Rat Ogres. He really kind of probably needed 2 units of them, I'd say, but if you're going with this many Gutter Runners with poison, it's kind of expensive. They're a fairly costly unit. The one thing that I will note about the Gutter Runners with poison is that they're actually a pretty good way to ward off Dragon Princes who can't easily chase after them just because the poison really screws over their movement charge. So I think that that's actually a pretty good call as far as that goes. I have like a lot harder time though catching the Night Runners, or no, I can't remember actually. It's the unit with the like even higher stealth speed or whatever that they've got. I can't remember. In any event, though, you can see here my opponent has got his 3 units of Gutter Runners with poison screwing around the front there and just sort of screening away my army. Now, my army, for its part, I assumed potentially my opponent was going to be taking artillery. Once I've scanned his army and checked and found that he does not in fact have any artillery, I start moving my army out of the woods, because I'm not doing this to cheese him, I'm just doing it because that's what you do when your opponent has a massive amount of artillery. So I'm perfectly willing to come out of the woods and fight him on even terrain here. Now, the Handmaidens of the Everqueen, I've taken 2 of them. The thing is that these ladies are actually really good at assassinating generals. You just sort of have them pluck away at them with their arrows, and they're going to be able to deal some pretty good damage. So you've got Queek here already taking fire. I think I missed my first shot, and unfortunately our next few shots end up going into the clan rats, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, so you can just sort of click these people onto the enemy general, and they're able to do some pretty decent damage. I get flanked here by these gutter runners with poison, and have to run off. That's fine. I'm able to get some shots off against these rat ogres, which is nice. I don't like what I don't like about these ladies and their bows is that they don't have the penetrations. They are character assassination weapons, which I'm not necessarily sure. I think that that's a great niche. I do prefer the other ones that have got that ability to penetrate. Anyway, these gutter runners with poison here running around here just being a nuisance. He doesn't want to engage me frontally, obviously. Our Dragon Princes are there just to ward him off, so we can't continue firing for free at our 2 Handmaidens. But I think we've got them back on Queek over here. In any event, though, we've tried shooting away at the Rat Ogres primarily. But over here, Storm Vermin, Sword and Shield, coming up to the front here. He's charged in with these like Clan Rats with shields on the flank. I don't really give a crap about that. That's not a huge deal. Storm Vermin, they've got a good angle here. Like, I would have actually gone even further out of the woods if my opponent had not rushed forward and gotten into my arrow range, but he did so. In any event, my opponent's coming forward towards these Dragon Princes again, and we were still, like, pounding away with our arrows against these Rat Ogres. I'm going to run away with my Dragon Princes, actually, for just a little bit here, but yeah, you can see that these Rat Ogres have taken very little damage. I would have thought they'd have taken a lot more by now, since they're quite vulnerable to arrows. In any event, an assassin charges straight into our ladies here. They're going to run off. Doesn't really make sense for me to stick in the fight. Swordmaster's coming over there. So over here, like, he's got tons of stuff in my front line, and our Swordmasters are just routing stuff. They're going to get like hundreds. I missed my goddamn thing there. That's so good. Anyway, Queek is being hit by Arcane Enforging. That's going to be a lot of damage to him, as you can see. And he's going to end this battle with something like 6 kills, despite being a fairly good melee general, in fact. Alariel's taking some hits there. I don't really have to care. They're, like, not that serious. But Queek's also getting shot at by our 2 Handmaidens, although they're kind of blocked right now by, of course, the Dragon Princes, so I don't think there's any shots going on right now. But, yeah, Queek here, not doing a great job. The Assassin here, not doing that good a job. So we are throwing some healing into them. The Rat Ogres would be able to do a much better job, but they're blocked by their own units. This is the one downside of blocking for your stronger units, is that sometimes you get locked up there and can't get in there. So here you can see the Rat Ogres, like, they're kind of retreating at this point in time already. And yeah, that's going to be pretty bad for them. I think he should be focusing on the Swordmasters, and I think he might be, but doesn't really matter at this point. He's already in a lot of trouble. In any event, I'm going to be actually trying to get out of here with the Dragon Princes, and that's going to be pretty important. Meanwhile, Queek getting out, I'm starting to focus fire the Gutter Runners. I have got magical shots, actually, for part of this, but in any event, I run Alariel in, and I'm not entirely sure why I did. I just do a cheeky charge against their assassin for no good reason whatsoever. Anyway, Death Runner's coming in. I managed to get like Queek with the Arcane and Forging and start chasing down with Alariel, and I managed to get the charge off with the Dragon Princes against the Death Runners here, just to get that hit there, and continue firing away at these Gutter Runners with poison here. But yeah, you can see Alariel has killed off Queek, and that's going to start some real bad shit for the rest of the Skaven here. So over here, like, our Swordmasters have run off into the Wild Blue Yonder, chasing a bunch of stuff I shouldn't have them chasing. These ones, on the other hand, still have an awful lot of stuff to fight, but the Death Runners, like, broken because of the Lord, honestly, and the fact that the Dragon Princes are pretty broken. But over here, like, our opponent's just trying to run in and get some shots against the archers to stop them from doing what they're doing there. But yeah, these 2 Handmaidens haven't got that many kills, but they did do quite a lot of damage to Queek, which is pretty nice. The assassin down here, it's like thinking, what can he do about this? But yeah, he gets charged in the face by Alariel. That's kind of risky for me to do, honestly, but I'm pretty okay with the decision. Get the heal off there, and she's going to be able to just tank through this pretty fine. Like, the assassin's not any match for Alariel if she's at full health and he gets a bad charge, and I did get a good charge, or he takes a bad charge. He's also getting shot at by the two handmaidens, who are, again, quite good at assassinating characters like him. He does get a good hit there, actually, but, yeah. That is the thing about Skaven Assassins. They do actually do good damage against heroes, it's just, yeah. Over here, Swordmaster is just, like, not really closing the gap with these Night Runners here, Gutter Runners, rather. But, yeah, just look how much blood they're covering. 174 kills, just chopping through rats. The assassin over here gets chased off by Alariel and one of the handmaidens. Like, he's not gonna survive that kind of fight there. Just random ass arrow comes in the back of the Gutter Runners, and that's gonna be basically the end of the battle there. So, yeah, it's just really easy. The only way that they can really stop that kind of thing from happening is with artillery, but the artillery is not super reliable, so it is very possible for them to actually end up in a situation where they can't easily kill Alariel, and she can kill Queek. There are better lords for dealing with this kind of nonsense than Queek Headtaker. Skrulk is pretty traditional as far as that goes, and he is pretty good at it, but even he'll get killed by Alariel, generally speaking. Now, if you really don't want to take Alariel, you think she's too overpowered or something like that, you still can get really good results. It's just that there aren't very many ways that give you just a really consistent, really reliable magic damage for your army sort of thing going on. Like, you could try to take Teclis and just take Flaming Sword of Ruin, but it's not very consistent. You're not going to have that every single time you need it. Bit of a holdout with those Storm Vermin, but the problem is, like, Storm Vermin crashing into Spearmen and sort of trying to force their way through really doesn't work. Their offensive stats are just so low that they take forever even at dealing with something like the Spearmen. And this is really one of those few instances where these guys will hold out for a long time against that sort of unit. Even though they won't win against Storm Vermin, they're going to keep them in place for a lot longer than you really want them to. And this is, like, exactly where this kind of matchup should be, in my opinion. Like, the Spearmen will lose the fight, but you're paying quite a lot for them, so you want them to actually be able to do something. So being a speed bump against a slightly more elite unit, like that's where you sort of want that to be, as opposed to a sort of matchup where your opponent takes Forsaken, which is a slightly more expensive unit, and they basically just kill them off in 2 seconds. It's, like, not even close. Swordmaster's here, 241 kills, 194 kills. Dragon Princess, I didn't do a very good job with them, honestly, but that didn't matter too much. And realistically speaking, I didn't even necessarily kill all that many of these rats compared to how many he actually took. It's because his general died and his assassin died that he lost all his leadership, and his troops just ran off because of that. And that's really the problem that the Skaven sort of have. They're more reliant on their general, I think, than even, like, the Orcs, for example, are less reliant on that. And I think as well, if I recall correctly, all of their lords have relatively low hit points, if I recall correctly. Let's double check that, though. So if we take a look at these, like, a lot of lords have, like, 3,500 hit points or something like that. That's the generic there. Like, Alariel's a caster, so she doesn't really count. But the Prince here, he's got 3,050 for a generic, okay. 3,200 for him, 3,200 for him. And these are elves. Like, these guys are squishy. Teclis, I'm imagining, is, like, a wuss, because he's a caster, and he's, like, notoriously a wuss. Obviously, like, treemen are going to have more hit points. That's not really a fair comparison, but... Like, Beastmen here, 3,000, yeah, we're looking at some of these guys having over 4,000 here, but a lot of them have about 3,500 there. And, like, that's kind of, like, the expected number for me. I guess generics will have about 3,051, but Alberic, he's got only 3,100. That's pretty sad, actually. King Lowen, I guess actually maybe their lords are a little bit closer than I thought. Okay, so maybe they're not so bad. I'm imagining, like, Dwarf Lords have pretty beefy hit point pools. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're learning something here. Orc War Bosses have quite a lot of hit points. Yep. Okay, so I guess this is just the generic Lord kind of number there. But in any event, Tretch Craventail here. Yeah, he's kind of a niche pick, I find. I don't really know. But he seems pretty easy to kill. The Graciers actually can be the hardest to kill, actually, because you put them on a Screaming Bell, and, like, that boosts up their defense by a ton. It makes them a little bit, like, worse at killing things in some respects there, but this is probably the hardest to kill of the lords, other than the fact that they're a large target. So if you've got some archers or something like that, you focus them down, and they go down really quickly if you do that. weak head taker here. Oh, he's only got 3,216 hit points there. He's got pretty mediocre melee defense, actually, 42 there. I guess he is a great weapon type unit, perhaps. So he's pretty bad. And then you've got Lord Skrulk here. I think he's actually pretty durable. Skrulk is basically only hindered by the fact that he's got like no armor. So yeah, he has a pretty tough time staying alive under a lot of circumstances, actually. So yeah, that's kind of the Skaven roster. None of their generals are sort of too difficult to assassinate. All of them seem to have some sort of weakness to them, other than sort of the generic spellcaster lords with the screaming bells. Those are kind of tough to kill. But even then, I have not found it too difficult if I'm focusing a lot of fire on those generals. And once they're dead, their entire army's pretty useless. So, yeah, that's kind of the state of Skaven right now. I think that my opponent possibly should have taken some actually, he did have the superior range unit, gutter runners with poison there. So yeah, like I think my opponent would have been well suited if he'd taken some plague claw catapults and some warp lightning cannons, perhaps. Maybe even doom wheels. Doom wheels are also very, very powerful. It's a super weird matchup because theoretically Skaven have got all the tools to deal with high elves, and they've got that advantage in that high elves don't really deal with mass numbers all that well. I think they're really sort of let down by the storm vermin and stuff like that. The fact that these guys cost so much. These guys actually cost a lot more than I thought they did. But like their melee attack here of 36 is what really holds them back by a lot. I think their weapon damage is also pretty not that great, but it's not terrible either. But they're kind of given a tanky distraction kind of unit when they probably need to be a killer type unit, given how much they cost. Given how much they've already got for like clan rats with shields do fine just blocking units and getting killed in the process. Plague monks do a pretty okay job actually of doing the same because they've got that 15% physical resistance. Death runners do an excellent job because it's 30% physical resistance. I don't know, like I'm not entirely sure what they could do to fix this particular matchup because it would be super easy to overcorrect this one. I think that right now high elves have like this sort of weird massive advantage against Skaven where they can just sort of pick off a few key things and then everything else just falls apart. So it doesn't matter that you took humongous numbers because the individual units are just a lot worse than a lot of the other equivalent units. Like I guess we could look at a clan rat there, a 325 point unit. It's got 45 leadership. We can take a look at a goblin unit. The goblins actually have more leadership there and cost less. Of course, I think, yeah, I think even the night goblins have more than yeah, it's about the same actually as a Night Goblin and a Clan Rat. And Night Goblins are notorious for how bad their leadership is. So I guess actually, like, it's not as bad as it could be since they have at least more than the Night Goblins, but Orcs have solid 60 leadership there at 450 points. Like, what do these guys have at that point range? It's still 45, really. You get up to 68 by the time you get to the semi-elites, and these guys do not... Look at the Stormvermin, their leadership is 60. Like, when you're comparing your leadership to orcs and you're sort of looking at your units that are not really that high up there and you're getting sort of beaten by the orcs in terms of leadership, you're probably in a pretty bad place. Like, it is only by 8 points, and there are a couple of units here that can sort of match that. And then the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers are actually pretty good. Like, they got a 72 compared to the 72 for the Black Orcs. So, like, that's okay. But it seems like these guys just have more leadership than the Skaven do, which is pretty pathetic when you really think about it. And also, like, if you're playing as orcs, generally speaking, you're not going to pick these guys. But let's see if I can find orcs here. I have not played them in a while. Greenskins, that's why I can never find them. Like, you could take Grimoire Ironhide, and he's got a ton of hit points. He's got lots of armor. He's pretty durable. He's hard to kill. Azag here, he's got a decent amount of hit points, and you can also put him on a mount there and give him even more hit points, make him a little bit harder to kill depending on what you're up against there. And then there's like weird things like Skarsnik, who can, I think, no, he's not the one that can do it. Who the hell's the one that can do it? Is it the Night Goblin War Boss? I'm pretty sure there's like one of them that can like hide, and I'm not sure about that. Probably isn't actually, and I'm just like imagining that one of them can hide because they're so small and it's hard to notice that they're there. But like, I find that generally speaking, it's actually pretty hard to assassinate orc generals, just most of the time. I find that Warzeg is the one that probably is most commonly taken. He's got 3,510 hit points. Like, it's got decent physical resistance, 25% there. I guess that's probably why he's a bit harder to kill. I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not really sure what you can do about the Skaven. Like, them having relatively fragile lords is a bit of a problem for them that I don't think you would really need to fix or want to fix. But Protect the Lord is a really painful game when you're playing a Skaven, I generally find. So, who's to say? Anyway, hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.